It's not far off what I wanted to show. I'll just zoom out a wee bit. So as you can see, it's got the title block at the bottom. This is what we'll be putting in later on, and the logo, okay? With the logo, I won't actually see it. I'll just see the path. So if you really want to start the semester by getting up my nose, make a path on your home computer saying C drive, I don't like Roger, civil drawing sucks or whatever, and I'll see that on there, and in the end it will say Unitec logo.jpg, right? And the same thing will happen when you bring it in here to Unitec. If you haven't got the logo in the same folder as the AutoCAD drawing, it'll come up with that path and you won't be able to see it, okay? So don't like get me out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning in my pajamas to come around to your house and go, please fix my logo. You'll take it home and it'll be fine, okay? I don't mark you according to your path, although if you do put something nasty there, I'll have a good laugh about it, then I'll take half a mark off. I mark according to the box, and the box should be touched nicely down on the corners like that. Also, sometimes it goes to the back of the drawing, so the title block comes onto front. If I get an opportunity, I'll show you how to put that from the front to the back. Some of you have figured that out already, okay? So on the face of it, this one doesn't look too bad, does it? You know, it looks fairly professional. It almost looks like something that could be presented in an office, an engineering office. Considering that the person that did it, like you guys have only had a few semesters at Unitec, 1 or 2 semesters. We got the path right. They've done a star, a little bit Christmassy, but I'm still okay with that. This was for the native trees. There was 1, 2, 3 native trees here. I put a fictitious manhole in here. This is the part of the field that you look out of from the building 112, that flat bit that you do your surveying on, okay? And I put a manhole from there across the path and into here, etc. And we put a platform there, and we put a pipeline across here now. Good notes. The notes are pretty good. And you can use some of those if you want to, I don't mind. But don't put in note 2, existing shed to be removed. You don't have a shed. That is that point I've suddenly realised you are copying those notes rather than coming up with your own ones, okay? But you can use that as a concept. Most people don't find it too hard to come up with 10 notes for this drawing. The issues that I have here with this drawing, and this is why I probably marked it at around about a 7 or an 8 out of 15. I was very specific before about the bush, wasn't I? Somehow they've decided they wanted to put some grass in there just to make it look pretty, right? That hatch was correct, but they've not played with their line type scale very well here. That did not come up as a very good line type scale. I'll just zoom in on that. That looks more like a survey PEC line type scale to me. It's not too bad, but it is just a little bit too small. That's more like a survey PEC line. The centre line is not too bad. You see this PEC line here? That's about the way it should be. And so is the circle about the right size as well. No problem with the survey, but I'm not happy that there's no distinction between the survey and the pipe. You could almost think that that's a double survey line going on there. Another thing, very long arrows here to the pipe, the stormwater pipe. They haven't joined up the survey labels very well. They should have brought the line in to meet them, and that spot height is the right height, but that is the wrong. They've used 3.5 for the labels. So wrong label height and not joining the labels in. And once again, the existing shed that's being removed is all the same dash line. So they've used no imagination, just used one line type, and they've set their LT scale and gone, that'll be no problem at all. But here's one of the worst ones. See the outlet structure? You've got one of those. And it's not bad, it fans out, doesn't it? Like I showed that sketch, the rough one. Everyone's going, no, I don't remember that sketch. Okay, well, we did do a sketch. I'll make this wetlands curve around a bit more. The pipe, remember this in class? Some of you may not have been sleeping. I really appreciate when you say, no, I wasn't sleeping in your class. You remember that with the pipe coming out?
Yeah, yes.
The pipes on this job is 450, 300. I can't remember. 350 is it? 300. The pipe's 300, and when you look at the outlet structure, I would say it's probably about that size. Whereas this, I said in class, is between 1 and 1.5 metres alone, is that distance there on the wing wall. That's 1 to 1.5. So I've got a bit of flexibility. I'm at this stage, this is only a proposed, but you need to try and get things about the right size. So 1.5 metres is about here. That's just for that bit.
So that one is too small.
Way too small.
Yeah.
Looks like the end of a pipe, like a flange around the end of the pipe. Yeah. Which means that they didn't really have any idea of what an outlet structure was. I always say, take a drive over to the North Shore. Most of the beaches there have got an outlet for a stormwater going into the beach. Most of them have got some sort of outlet structure on them. You could also type into Google, there are standard ones. We're not going to be doing a standard one. Yeah, it saves a trip to the North Shore, right? We're not doing a standard one though. The height of this is only going to be 100 mils above the ground level to stop the ground from coming over the top of the pipe. So ours will be fairly high. The standard ones come at different heights. I guess in engineering, in my time, I've always tried to do things with standard, so much easier. Standard trusses, standard outlet structures. If you can design around that, life's very easy, I can tell you that. And things go through council a lot easier.
So how do you call that thing? This structure?
Outlet structure.
Outlet.
There's also an inlet, you've got both, but they mirror each other.
Okay.
Locality plan. Actually, this is their attempt at a scale bar. They've only put a number on the left-hand side, which is normally 0, and you can't read it. So what they've done with their locality plan is they've done a good job. They've missed the motorway out, so that's kind of difficult. But they've reduced their text height to try and get it onto the draw. I can see Carrington Road, that's great. Could not read that in 1,000 years. Proposed site, but no arrow to the site. I'm assuming that circle is the site, but I couldn't be 100% certain. You know, so they are responsible for killing thousands of students while the truck driver's going round and round Unitec trying to find the site. Another thing, no North Point. Yes, there's a North Point, I think, in the corner of the drawing.
Yeah, there is.
But locality plans don't always reflect the drawing. And if they do, well, simple case of copying the North Point onto there, right? Lastly, the hatch is pretty good. On this drawing, it's a little bit long, but not too bad. I probably would have approved that in class if they picked it up and showed me. Because remember, the wetlands goes for miles way over here. But they didn't cut it out of this. It goes right through here. And if you have a look up the top, it goes right through the survey coordinates, and it also goes, they've got text down the bottom over the top of the I'm not saying that I will mark you down if you do this hickledy-pickledy, but at least take out some of these things to make sure that they don't cross over the top of on notes. The issue I've had over the years is students have ignored that, or sorry, workers, people I've employed. I worked in a drawing office in Newmarket and I was in charge of about 15 designers, engineering designers, so I had a pretty tight rein on them. And this sort of thing often resulted in a print going out the door where you couldn't read something, or you could easily miss, especially a number, you know, a 150 turned into 50 sort of thing, you know. And in my time, they didn't have really sharp laser printers either. So it was, it was very hard to read sometimes, the A3s. So let me have a look at the next drawing. And most of you will agree, I hope, that this is a much better way of presenting the drawing. Okay? So, everything's down here.
So that, all of that stuff there, the notes, the legend, locality plan.
Yep, that's part of your...
Is that in your model space, or is that...
yes, it will be.
It's in your
And
model
I'm
space.
going to show you how to do it so you can maintain the same text type. So obviously, if that's a viewport with 1 to 100, if you make that a viewport of 1 to 100, then you can use the same text type, and it'll all come through nice, readable type. And you're wondering how I do it? Well, we'll do that shortly. One thing that's interesting, they kind of missed the ball a wee bit here, but they have shown a flow arrow. Any water, stream, creek, river, wetlands that is draining, and that is a draining wetlands, by the way, you should show a direction of flow arrow, and try and make it a bit different than your normal arrow that you would use, like this one here, or this one here. So they have made it a bit different, but it looks a bit like a north point to me. It's kind of, yeah, I think, and also they've left out the word direction of flow, which kind of doesn't quite fit. So direction of flow arrow, you've got a creek and you've got a wetland. If you're not sure, that's the way how the water's flowing, because that's where the ocean is. All right. There is one part where I used to live in Auckland called Green Bay, which is the skinniest bit between the Waitemata and the Manukau. And it's very hard at one point to know which way the water's actually flowing, depending on whether they have a rain downpour or not. It either goes down through New Lynn, which got flooded in that big flood that they had a few years ago, or it goes out to the Manukau through the beaches. But most parts of Auckland are pretty easy to tell which way the water's going.
So that arrow there in the corner is showing where
the direction of flow of the water, but it's not a very good arrow. There's no text saying what it is. It's just sort of there. And the worst part is you've got that on a slight angle and you've got the north point there. At least that says north, so I'd probably go with that. But there's a bit of a, you know, if you're looking at locality plans, that one's nearly perfect, except 200 meters should be 0 and 200 over here. But it's pretty good. It shows the location of site, got that, but it doesn't have, I think that text could have been a lot bigger. That's gone real low on text. I think we're struggling to see. I'm guessing that's the site, so that should have been a good sized text there. Probably they've gone a little bit over the top in terms of what they've drawn. We don't really want to see all the other roads around Unitec, but it's pretty good. Everything's pretty good there. This is a little bit marginal because it's kind of printed with a big blur, you know, and I'm trying to see which one of those, which looks very similar, is what, and I've got two big blobs there. You see, the problem with AutoCAD is you can zoom in on it and it looks perfect. But you've got to be thinking of what's coming out the other end. If you're not sure, do a print. Print to a PDF and have a look at the PDF. Or print to an A1 print. Take it away and have a look.
That's
Other things with this, that's how they've shown the bush. Just with a straight line, so they missed the mark there. At least they didn't have the grass on there. What would Ingrid do to you if you started your text on the top pointing down? And started at the top pointing down?
You've got to put the text from the bottom line, don't you?
On the bottom left or right, depending on which way the arrow's going to be. Alright? So if you want a good kick in the bum, you're going to get one from me if you start doing that in this class, because you're supposed to know those things from technical literacy. I know it's a lot to know, but that's an example of the sort of things that... This one probably got more like a 7 or an 8 or a 9. I'm just looking at it, I was particularly impressed. Also, they've done the right size labels here and they've brought the lines in, so that was really good. But they've done tiny little circles for the survey, and they haven't done a pet line, it's a large dash, not a small dash. Right? So the things start adding up, and I guess I work backwards from an A drawing in terms of absolute perfection. This is not the right way on the title block. You don't go scale 1 to 100 and then put as shown A1. You tend to do what it's done on the next drawing, which is in a minute. We tend to put 1 to 100 at A1, like that. But this student decided that they were a little bit better than everybody else and decided to put lowercase text on the title block.
It looks nicer.
Yeah. I think
I know where the capitals come from when you used to use by pen, but now that we use computers.
Yeah, yeah, and I grew up having to do manual drawing, so I had to. My first week in the Ministry of Works was practicing my letters before they let me loose. A, B, C. Talk about primary school, and we did a lot of stuff in lowercase in those days. But everything now is standard, is a standard uppercase. Also, I guess engineers are a bit boring compared with architects. Architects tend to be allowed to use the other side of the brain a lot more, the flair side, and they tend to still lay drawings out on the big boards and you know, do a bit of the sketchy stuff. I like having a bit of a shot at the architects later on when we do some 3D. I'll show you how to render a drawing and then I'll show you what architects do, because there's a rendering facility that makes it look sketchy. So you take the sketchy one into the client, then you charge them a couple of weeks worth of work to change it like that to a normal drawing. Yeah, tuck away the other side of the brain while you're here at Unitec. Sorry, it's just the way it is. I'm quite lucky I don't have a lot going on that side of the brain, but other people do. They didn't bring the contours into join, which is a real shame because they did a lovely job of the bush, and then they've gone right where the bush is and not joint the contours up properly. They've also shown water flow arrows everywhere, which is an interesting thing. You should be putting water flow arrows on your proposed site plan. Council want to see where the water's going to go. Is it going to go in the creek and you're going to get in trouble with the iwi? Is it going to go in some neighbour's garage and flood the garage? You know, what's happening during when the project becomes a proposed a proper platform, etc. So save that one up for assignment 2, but don't show it on assignment 1. They've used centerline for the center line of the pipe. They've also done a terrible outlet structure. It's a tiny little thing. It seemed like that particular year, everyone was copying everyone because the outlet structures were almost all identical. Like often the top student in the class will do something and everybody follows like lemmings, you know. They jump off the Auckland Harbour Bridge, then there's no one there next week, all that sort of thing going on. And that's exactly what does tend to happen. I did say every second dash should be a grass, and they've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dashes to the grass, and that is way over the top in terms of the hatching for that particular job. They didn't do the path, the hatch that I suggested, which is kind of like a brick basket weaving type hatch. And they haven't done the thing with everything on the right hand side either. There's nothing wrong with the drawing, it's a different approach, but lots of improvements could have been made there to get a much better mark.
What are these errors like? Random errors in the drawings?
Yep.
What are they?
The water flow direction arrows? They're not labelled, and they're not meant to be on an existing site plan.
So
Existing
water
site
flow?
plan, existing site plan is what the survey's picked up.
Why is it water flow? No, it's like in the middle of the drawing, like it's not water there. These arrows.
They are water flow arrows. I will teach you about those in about
yeah,
week 5 or 6, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. Don't worry. I'll stick it in your brain about week 4 or 5.
Okay, but we have to identify them somehow.
Water flow arrows,
But
okay.
I mean, it's like we have to identify them. Like he didn't.
You will have to do it for the proposed site plan assignment 2.
Okay.
They are always at right angles to contours. So we always do our contours first. Then we put the water flow arrows at right angles. And it's exactly like when I was at a French versus All Black rugby test many years ago, and this guy stood up, drunk as a skunk, and punched someone in the crowd, and then went back down again and went like that. And the whole crowd went like that. Unbelievable. There would have been 10,000 people all pointing at him, and it didn't take rocket science for the guys to figure out where the arrows were going to where he was. Well, that's what we do with water flow arrows, and that tells you exactly where to put the drain. All right? In this case, some quite big security guards all ended up beside him and escorted him with a good fight off the terrace. So, do you understand that analogy? Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Gotcha.
You understand the French did beat us that day in 1996, so most of us were pretty angry after the game, but never mind.
Okay.
Some of us didn't really care.
And some, yeah, well, there we are. Others just carried on like nothing had happened, which at the time was my wife. That's probably why I'm not married to her anymore, but you know, she really didn't care.
Right.
Okay. Sorry for anyone out there that's French, by the way. We are now going to open up our survey drawing, and the last part of the class will commence. As the other class starts lining up, wondering why I'm not there yet. The survey drawing I put in here, so we start up the AutoCAD. I